Western Mass News.
New developments on a story we've been following since last month. The fallout from the racial bullying scandal at Southwick Regional School continues as the Greater Springfield NAACP is now joining in on calls for a Southwick School Committee member to step down. Welcome everyone to Western Mass News at 10. I'm Chris Pisano. Western Mass News reporter Matt Price is in studio with more. Matt.
Yeah, Chris, the school committee member named in this lengthy statement is Desiree Maloney. This statement coming from the NAACP, and they allege that her son was among the 6 juveniles charged in bullying incidents that targeted students of color. Now, the Greater Springfield NAACP, in solidarity with a Southwick Select Board member, have one word for her: resign. This alleged racial bullying inside Southwick Regional School dates back to mid-February, which authorities say included an online slave auction where white students could bid on their black classmates. We spoke with Allison Lopez, the mother of a young black student who was victimized by these racist incidents. She echoes the call for Maloney to step down.
I think now there's a couple people probably now realizing the need for her to remove herself from this committee, from making decisions in this town, in this district that affects this town, this district, the students, and the people in this community.
Lopez also spoke at Tuesday's school committee meeting, looking straight at Southwick-Tolland-Granville Regional School District Superintendent Jennifer Willard during her fiery remarks.
My daughter came to school on Monday. A friend told her, you know what? You had a conversation of a birthday party over the weekend. The little girl was talking about how much she bidded on you. Do you know that? Was that brought to your attention? Don't say you, because I know you know. Should she have to go through that again?
In part of the NAACP statement, Bishop Talbert Swan says, quote, "What's appalling is the years of apathy, inaction, and indifference by the school committee, superintendent, and school district that has created a pernicious environment that has divided the community along racial lines. The citizens of Southwick deserve better from their elected school committee members." Lopez tells Western Mass News she wants there to be a school committee meeting to focus solely on this particular issue, saying 3 minutes per person of public comment is not enough. She also believes that while the resignation of Maloney would be a start, she believes there needs to be a revamping of the whole committee.
I think people need to come in and have conversations with them, see where they are, where their mindset is. Do they understand what's happening? How do they want to fix it? Not just holding this political seat because it looks good on their resume, right?
Now, Lopez also acknowledges she will continue to make her voice heard, not just for her daughter, but for all students who have faced bullying. We contacted both school committee member Desiree Maloney and committee chair Robert Stevenson for comment. We have not yet heard back. Stick with us both on air and online as we continue to follow the latest. For now, reporting in the studio, Matt Price, Western Mass News.
Matt, thank you.